Well, good evening, everyone. We cannot hear it, but the clock at Old Main has struck 7 o'clock, which means it's time to begin, right? Welcome to the lovely garden level of the Sparks building. We're happy to see our contestants here again tonight. I'm really amazed at how willing you are to spend your time giving a speech during the second last week of classes. I happen to live downtown, so as I was strolling down Allen Street on my way here, I saw students having lots of fun and going out to dinner and so forth, but yet no one will have as much fun as we do here in the next hour or so, right? That's a guarantee. So welcome everyone to the Spring 2024 Civic Engagement Speaking Contest. Hooray! So I actually always have to write down a note to remind me to introduce myself or I forget. So I met some of you students last night, but for the rest of you who might not know me, my name is Dr. Bonnie Serlecki, and I am the director of the CAS 100 program here at Penn State. Now, I'm curious if any of you who are in the audience tonight, or even some of our students yourselves, if you thought perhaps that it was a little bit strange, maybe that we have a contest over an assignment that you get to do over the course of the semester, right? Because when we talk about effective communication throughout the semester, we've talked a lot about, right, community, right? Finding ways to engage with and identify with your audience, talking about what kind of values we share in common. So does it seem strange that we find ourselves in a competitive mode tonight, right? I mean, maybe that's not strange to some of you. I did speaking competitions like forensics and debate in high school and college, but I never really thought about kind of that aspect of competition when it comes to civic engagement. So even though we are going to have a competition among our 6 finalists tonight, I think it is worth thinking about the ultimate goal, which is, in fact, working together to find solutions to problems that exist in our various communities. So tonight's speakers will compete in that they will test their ideas with you, right? Although ultimately, the idea is that community members, stakeholders, we've talked about that during the semester, right? And all of us who value Penn State as part of our community, right? We're all looking for ways that we can improve this community that we find ourselves so invested in. So that's really the overall tone of tonight, right? In fact, right, do you remember in the beginning of the semester when we talked about how the ancient Greeks were the first people, at least that we know of, to study rhetoric and persuasion as a systematic area of study, right? As a democratic society. The Greeks even had a term for this form of competition, right? They called it the agon, right? Same kind of word root as agony, antagonistic, right? So there's a competition and there's a struggle over ideas, but ultimately the goal is to find the best possible solutions to make our communities a better place. So for you who are joining us tonight and dedicating your valuable time to supporting our 6 contestants, let's think about their ideas and test them as members of the community, right? Now, before I introduce our first speaker, this is of course the time of, this is the portion of the show where I thank everybody, right? I go through the big long list of thank yous. So I'm going to start off first by thanking the assistant director of CAS 100. Y'all met Sergio Pena last night. Let's thank Sergio. Sergio is the true brains and brawn behind this competition, as you saw last night. And thank you so much for your amazing efforts coordinating with an assist from next year's assistant director, Dan Lee. You met Dan last night as well. Thanks, Dan. Of course, I must also thank the amazing support staff in the CAS department, our communication, arts, and sciences staff people, and in particular, Jaren Lee and Emily Bush-Clark have done an amazing job making sure that we got you set up and hooked up, not only for the logistics of the contest, but the part where you get the money afterward, right? So thank you, Jaren and Emily. Okay. Next, I'd like to thank as well as introduce tonight's panel of judges. They're all seated up here if they'd like to give a wave. Our first judge tonight is Dr. Stephen Brown, who is a liberal arts professor of communication arts and sciences. Dr. Brown is a prominent scholar in rhetoric with particular interests in areas like public memory, social movements, and even early democracy. I mean, they had test of ideas during that period, right? Talk about some testing of ideas, right? Yeah. Another fun fact about Dr. Brown, he's the co-editor of the Rhetoric, Deliberation, and Democracy book series that is published by the Penn State University Press. And he is a distinguished scholar of the National Communication Association. Now, if you don't know what any of that means, you can probably infer that he's a really smart guy, right? And in fact, Dr. Brown will be retiring this semester after an illustrious career at Penn State, and his final wish was not a party, not a celebration, but to judge this contest, of course. So thank you, Dr. Brown, for your time. Oh, well, funny how that works. Our second judge tonight is Michael DeLeo. Mike is a PhD candidate in the Communication Arts and Sciences Department. Mike's area of study is the rhetoric of multimedia pop culture. And in particular, Mike looks at the art of persuasion through the lens of sports and fandom, right? And in this semester, Mike is teaching a special topics class for the CAS department on communicating sports and race. So we are very interested to hear Mike's perspective on our speakers tonight as well. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Our third distinguished judge tonight is Shivari Urgali. Hi, Shivari. Shivari is a first-year student here at Penn State studying computer science. And in fact, last semester in the fall 2023 Civic Engagement speaking contest as a first-year computer science major, Shivari was our contest winner. And she delivered a very impactful speech proposing a policy of implementing bystander intervention training here at Penn State's campus to help tackle the problem of sexual assault, right? You can, in fact, go to YouTube and see Shivari's speech from last year if you so desire. And continuing with this new tradition, we will also be inviting tonight's winner to come back and serve as a distinguished judge next semester. Thank you so much again, Shivari, as a student, very busy this time of year. We really appreciate your input, and we think this panel will have a variety of perspectives for which to give some feedback to our contestants tonight. So thank you, judges. Now next, you who are here. Thank you, not only again for spending your time here, but for supporting our speakers and being willing to listen to their very creative, thoughtful, and persuasive ideas about, again, how to make our community a better place, right? And then lastly, and definitely not least, the contestants themselves, right? We had a fantastic time last night hearing a variety of speeches from other students as well. And now we get a chance to focus on you six and your very, very well-researched and thought out ideas. So thank you so much for really embracing that opportunity to take this assignment seriously and think about ways that, again, we can come together and partner as community members to improve the various problems that we encounter in our daily lives. Now, with that said, I think everyone is about ready for me to be quiet and to hear directly from the students themselves. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker tonight. First up, no pressure, the prime time spot, right? Our first speaker tonight is Alayna Faison, who is instructed this semester by Naomi Baker. Thank you, Alayna. Thank you.
Technology has been evolving since the beginning of time, from clay tablets to papyrus to typewriters and computers. All of these have been used to aid in education. My name is Alayna Faison, and I'm a food science student here at Penn State, and I've seen this technology evolve throughout my time. I've seen my blackboards turn to whiteboards, and I've seen many others as well. So that's why I'm excited to talk to you today about generative AI. It's a new and up-and-coming tool. Right now, I already use generative AI in my personal and my professional life. I use it to create Instagram captions or write a LinkedIn post, but I hesitate to use it in my academic sense. This is because there is a gap in Penn State's G9 Code of Academic Regulations in regards to the standard usage of generative AI. This academic policy falls under the Academic Administrative Policies and Procedure Manual, and it creates uncertainty because there's no standard guide. So today in my speech, I will be talking to you about what AI is, the gaps we have in our current policy, a new proposal for our existing policy, and the advantages of this. So first, we need to understand what AI is. And I love this quote by Erin Ethier. He states that AI is just a tool. It's up to us on how we use it. Just like a hammer, you can either create or destroy with this. So many of you may be familiar with some of the companies that are on the screen, but these are some of the forms of generative AI. Google has Gemini and OpenAI has ChatGPT. ChatGPT has two versions, paid and unpaid version. Each has its own respective capabilities, but you can create anything from reports to recipes and others as well. So basically what happens is you have a prompt, you add additional information, and you get a result. So for example, say I have a dinner party coming up. I say, ChatGPT, can you make me a recipe? I need it to feed 10 to 12 people, that's the info, and then you get a result. Me, I have a peanut and tree nut allergies. So if it spits something out that has peanuts or tree nuts in it, I'm out of luck. So I would just type in, hey, can you make this recipe without peanuts and tree nuts? It would generate a new response in under a minute. And that's an amazing and powerful tool. So why aren't we using this amazing and powerful tool? And why is it so confusing right now? Well, I have some professors that encourage the use of this, and it's amazing. I get to use it in my business writing class to write business correspondence. But in my CAS class, I'm strictly prohibited to use it. And this uncertainty is really frustrating as a student. So what can we do to create a policy to close this gap and alleviate this uncertainty? We can look to other schools that do it very well. For example, Duke has a very great website on this. They talk about all that they can do. They have very informative information, and they have resources for teachers and students to implement. But my favorite thing that Duke has on their website is the pitfalls of generative AI. It talks about bias, inequality, inaccuracies, intellectual property, and ethics. AI is created by people, so it inherently has these biases. I love that it shows the beginning promisings of AI, and it also shows the pitfalls. It's a very well-encompassed tool, and it's a great way to learn about this information. So as you can see, this is such a well-rounded tool. What does ours look like right now? Well, it says the use of these tools in academic settings can generate text for classwork can be a violation. Does this mean it is a violation to use generative AI in academic settings? I don't know. And that's very hard as a student to use this tool. So I want to take a pause right now. And I want to ask everybody in this room if you were born or alive in the year 2000. All right, just a couple. But like most undergraduates, we weren't born in the year 2000. And that's the last time that our academic regulation and policy was updated. It's time for a change. While I can harp on how much we need to change it, I also want to highlight some of the benefits of this policy that we already have. And that's that bottom portion where it says that each college can respectively choose their own way to integrate this policy. I think this is great because for some classes like, business writing, it's amazing to use. But for others, or maybe on a pre-med track, it might not be the best course of action. So now that we talked about the potential of AI and the gaps that we currently have, I want to talk to you about my new policy. First, let's talk about the stakeholders. The Faculty Senate. These are the people that control the academic administrative policies and procedures. They're the ones that can say what can and can't be updated in this policy. Next, you have the professors. They're the people who are going to be using this policy. They're the ones that are going to be integrating them into their classrooms. And then finally, the students. These are the people that get to harness this amazing tool. They get to use it and really make their work great. For me, I know sometimes the hardest thing is to get that first word on the page. But with generative AI, you can alleviate this stress and get to where you need to go a lot quicker. So next, I want to talk to you about my 4-step process. First, it starts with the forum. You have to get all the stakeholders and you have to understand what their needs, wants, and concerns are. You need for them to understand that their voices are heard. Next, you need to define what AI is. You need to define the parameters of what it looks like on Penn State's community and their campus. So I would love for this to be an opportunity for us to license something, just like we do with Adobe at PSU. Next, educational programs. Well, people don't know how to use, if they don't know how to use the tool, how are they going to integrate it? We can use the system already in place, which is teaching and learning through technology that's here at Penn State to help professors and students learn from this. And then finally, clearly defining the violations. Like I said earlier, it can be a violation or it is a violation. Creating that hard and defined line will eliminate the gray area, and it'll be amazing. So this is my 4-step process. But if you notice, there's a light blue box around that forum and educational programs. This is because I would propose a 5-year update and check-in. Things change over time, and you need people to keep looking in on these processes and problems. Educational programs are only as good as updated as they are. So I think it would be a great thing to check back in. So that way we don't have policies that are as old as 2000. So what are the advantages of this policy? Right now, it would provide clarity and close that void that we have in the policies that exist today. It will keep Penn State on the cutting edge of new technologies. And it will even attract prospective students, because if they can see that we're willing and open to adopting new technologies, they're going to want to go here. So now that you've seen what a powerful tool that AI can be, the gap that there is in our policies today, and the plan that I have to fix it, I want to share this quote with you. This is from Thomas Sankara, the former president of Burkina Faso. And it states, "It took the madmen of yesterday for us to act with extreme clarity today." I want to be one of those madmen, and we must dare into the future. I love this quote, and it really applies here to Penn State, because if we can act with extreme clarity today and implement this policy, we can close that gap in Penn State's G9 Code of Academic Regulations. We can create a tool and a system that works and is clear for all. So I may not know what technology will be around in the next 10, 20, or 30 years, but I do know that if Penn State can adapt this policy now, it will forever be able to adapt in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alayna. Our second speaker tonight is Aidan Ethier, who is instructed by Bryan Mesquita. Aidan.
I want you to imagine that you're scrolling through your email and you see a job offer for your dream job. You're so excited, you open it up, you click on that apply now button, and boom, your entire computer just shuts down. You have just been a victim of a phishing attack. For those of you that don't know, phishing attacks are those fake or scam emails that try to get you to give away your personal or financial information so they can steal it from you. This is an example of a phishing email I received earlier this year. Now, the way I identified it as such, I saw there at the top that name and that name in the signature at the bottom didn't quite line up. Additionally, the document that was attached here was something that I had already filled out through more official means, and the grammar was a little bit off. But it wasn't quite that simple. There were some tricks. For example, the name of the company that I was doing a background check for is the correct name up there, and that's the accurate name of my high school. Now, the reason I bring this up is I want you to consider whether or not you would have fallen for this phishing attack. You see, the policy I want to propose is mandatory training in phishing for students here at Penn State, as well as an easier to access report phishing button so that students don't fall for tricks like these and don't get their personal and financial information stolen. In this speech, I will go into greater detail about the damage that phishing does here at Penn State and the problem it poses. I will also go into greater detail about the policy that I plan to implement to fix this problem, as well as how it benefits students here specifically. Now, I touched on this a little bit, but what exactly is a phishing email? A phishing email, as I said, are those fake or spam emails that try to get you to click on a link or an attachment, so then you input your personal financial information and get it stolen from you. Here at Penn State, the Penn State Committee on Phishing says that the information security team analyzed 13,254 suspected phishing messages between February of 2023 and January of 2024. To put that into some context, there are about 46,000 students here at University Park. That means about 1 in 4 students here received a phishing email. Now, you might be thinking, oh, even if I did receive it, it landed in my inbox, I didn't open it, not a problem. But the data would actually say otherwise. According to DataProt, targets open 70% of the phishing emails that they receive. That means not only is there a decent chance you received a phishing email, there's a very good chance you opened it, and you may have even input some of your data. Now, if we can assume that, hey, you received it, you saw it, and maybe you even identified it as a phishing email. The next problem is, how do you defend yourself from it? By a show of hands, how many people here know how to report a phishing email? Not a ton, and that's kind of what I expected. Before researching this speech, I didn't even know how to report it. Apparently, you can attach it to another email sent to phishing@psu.edu, and then it'll go to the security team, and they can set up the necessary defenses. But the issue with people not knowing how to report these emails is that the defense team doesn't get these emails. They don't see the attacks, and so they can't figure out how to defend and protect from these attacks, and that's a problem. Now, the policy I plan to propose is twofold. The first part of this is adding the mandatory training. You see, very similarly, we already have in place some training for drug and alcohol safety that students take at the beginning of the year, as well as when you join any clubs, there's mandatory hazing training. I plan to propose something very similar to this, just some modules that students will go through throughout the year. They'll click on it, they'll read through it, and it'll teach them how to identify phishing emails, as well as how to report them. Now, a company that does this really well in the business setting is Cofense. They provide phishing training and simulation for actual businesses to train employees on how to recognize phishing emails, and they provide helpful metrics so those companies can direct that training and the need required. According to Cofense, employees learn to recognize actual phishing attacks instantly and get immediate validation until identification becomes second nature. If we employ something like this here at Penn State, students will become faster and faster at recognizing those emails and be less and less likely to fall for these attacks. According to Cyberpilot, after just 3 rounds of this kind of training, students are 60% less likely to fall for these attacks. That means 60% less likely to get their personal and financial information stolen. Now, addressing the second issue, the issue of reporting, as I mentioned, it's sort of complicated right now to report a phishing email. You have to attach it to a separate email, send it to the security team, and all of that is a lot of work, especially when you consider once you've identified it as a phishing email, all you have to do is click that little trash can at the top, and it's no longer your problem. The policy I propose is add a really easy to access report phishing button right there at the top next to the trash can. Outlook already has something like this built in both their web browser and their app-based browser. So all that Penn State would have to do is go into the settings, enable this button, set up that little inbox for the phishing emails to go, and the security team can very quickly and easily get these phishing emails so they can put in the necessary defenses. Now, the great thing about this policy is it is really cheap and really easy to implement. As I just mentioned, Outlook already has this functionality in place, and even though the training needs some time to consider the ideas and what goes into it and get it approved and everything, we already have the infrastructure in place with the alcohol and drug safety training to just put it right in, and so there's not too much money. Now, once this policy is in place, how does it benefit you as a student? Well, if you think about it, all the bad things that would have happened if you clicked on that link or that attachment is no longer happening. You're not getting your personal information stolen. You're not getting your money stolen. According to Proofpoint, 80% of all companies said that training reduced the likelihood of employees falling victim to attack. 80%. That means there's a very high likelihood that a lot of students here at Penn State will be much less likely to fall for these attacks and much less likely to lose all of that data. This is a chart from comparetype.com that shows from 2016 to 2021, there was a great increase in phishing complaints. And this number is only growing. Phishing is a major problem that we very quickly need to address. According to KnowBe4, about $17,700 worth of money is lost every minute around the world due to phishing. That is over $9.3 billion a year. By implementing this policy, we can ensure that Penn State students are not part of that $9.3 billion. Now, obviously, phishing is a very big problem, but there is an easy solution. Implementing my policy of mandatory training for students, as well as an easier to access report phishing button, can greatly reduce the amount of students falling for these attacks. The thing is, phishing is not just a problem here at Penn State. Once students graduate, go into their careers, they'll still be facing it. Even once you retire, you'll still be having to deal with these phishing emails. So developing the skills now to protect yourself from these phishing attacks is something that students can take with them for the rest of their life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aidan. Our third speaker tonight is Erin Bratcher, who is also instructed by Bryan Mesquita. Sounds like a good guy. Here you go. Oh, God.
Traffic safety isn't something that I think a lot of people take particular interest in, but I spent 2 years in high school doing a project on it in my hometown. So I'd like to start by sharing my experience with that. So I'm from Park City, Utah, and we have a lot of roundabouts. And there's one in particular that was notoriously dangerous because it was between our Walmart and our transit center. So there was always a lot of foot traffic in the area. And it always got really bad when it got dark early in the winter and it was hard to see, or when snowstorms caused bad visibility, or when it was peak tourist season and people were just overwhelmingly lost. So conditions like these caused a lot of accidents and near accidents, and people in my community were scared. So I decided to mediate this problem by installing flashing traffic beacons at the crosswalks around the roundabout. It was a really long, super complicated process, but in the end, I presented my proposal to the local county council. They gave me full funding and support, and the beacons were installed the summer after my graduation. So since being involved in a project like this, I've kind of become hyper aware of traffic issues wherever I go, and that includes here at Penn State. So as I mentioned, the issue in my hometown was roundabouts, but the bigger problem that State College has is with unmarked crosswalks. So I'm proposing that the Center County Council approves a policy to install flashing traffic beacons at the unmarked crosswalks in downtown State College. So I'm going to be talking about the dangers of having these unmarked crosswalks, explaining what is causing them to be an issue, and then explaining my proposed policy on how to mediate this problem. So first things first, of course, I have an issue with how many unmarked crosswalks we have in State College. When I say unmarked, I mean that they're not at existing intersections with traffic lights or any other safety features. And the first reason that this is a really big issue is because they're right next to a large university campus. Ringstad Law Office says that as of 2023, car accidents on or near campuses are the #1 cause of death for college kids. So like I said, this is a large university and there are a lot of college kids here. So numbers like these lend themselves to lots of potential accidents. But the crosswalks aren't technically on campus grounds. So not only do students rely on them, but so do all the parents and kids and families who live in this community. According to a statement given by a pedestrian representative named Peter Hecht to the Pennsylvania House Transportation Committee, 8% of vehicular accidents involving children in Pennsylvania occur when kids are walking to or from school. So generally on or near a campus. And I know 8% doesn't sound super threatening, but a 2023 survey by US News showed that there are nearly 3,000 elementary school students in State College. So I did the math. Based on these numbers alone, over 226 children are expected to be involved in vehicular accidents during their elementary school careers in State College alone. I think that's an awful lot of kids. If we can start by addressing these intersections before these accidents happen, we'd be protecting the kids, the parents, the families, everybody in this community. So now that I've established that this is in fact a problem, I'll get down to the cause, which is fairly simple. Drivers don't pay attention to pedestrians. As drivers, we assume that no one's going to jump in front of our car. And in theory, that's a pretty solid assumption. But in reality, it's the driver's responsibility to yield to anyone who may make poor decisions when crossing the street. As declared in Title 75 by the Pennsylvania General Assembly, when an intersection lacks traffic control signals, the pedestrian has the right of way. Even when an intersection has traffic control signals, the pedestrian has the right of way. So there's no excuse for drivers to be barreling through intersections without even a glance at who might be in them. But we see this all the time, don't we? Plus, Penn State is a dry campus, but we also have a thriving party culture. So everybody who's gone out and gotten drunk and is now stumbling home in the dark becomes an extra unreliable, hard to see target. And it's up to the driver to watch out for things like that. I know there's more to say about this than just people don't pay attention. Drivers and pedestrians have both been shown to be distracted. A personal injury law firm called Edgar Snyder and Associates says that nearly 40% of teenage drivers have admitted to driving while using their phones. Additionally, the National Library of Medicine says that over 30% of young people are distracted as they use crosswalks. So once again, there are a lot of teenage drivers and a lot of young people in this town. So numbers like these lend themselves to lots of potential accidents. These numbers also tell me that not one group of people is involved in making this a problem. Everybody is part of creating this dangerous situation, so everybody needs to be part of the solution. Luckily, the solution is kind of also fairly simple. I'm proposing the installation of flashing traffic beacons similar to the ones I put in my hometown. Referring back to Peter Hecht, flashing lights draw more attention than static lights, so they're more effective. Because they don't blink constantly, they are better at catching the eyes of drivers. And because they're button activated, they force the pedestrian to look up, hit the button, and watch the light. So now everybody is actively involved in paying attention in the intersection. And the best part is that they don't negatively influence the flow of traffic because they don't flash constantly or even routinely like a regular traffic light. States like Michigan and Arizona have already implemented structures like these, and they've reported all good findings. I think that State College should install beacons like these as soon as possible, starting with the intersections right next to campus because they're highly frequented by both vehicles and pedestrians. And then over time, we can expand our attention to all other necessary intersections. So a small change like this is a good investment that can have lasting impact. In a literal sense, they're permanent structures powered by solar energy, so they will last a long time with little to no maintenance. But beyond that, they encourage ideological change, and that will last a lifetime. This societal lack of awareness for vehicular and pedestrian safety is a real problem across the country. But if we can start by limiting distractions on our roads, we can help create a safer community for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Our fourth speaker tonight is Nicole Morandi, who is instructed by Brent Ottaway.
Indoor environmental quality is a significant issue at Penn State University, as well as most other universities across America. Environmental comfort not only affects the health of students, but also has an extreme impact on their academic performance. According to the National Library of Medicine, Americans spend approximately 90% of their time indoors. And as a result, their comfort, health, and work performance rely heavily on indoor environmental quality. Given the amount of time we spend in classrooms here at Penn State, it's essential to ensure an environment that promotes the concentration, attention, and effective learning of all of its students. Today, I'm here to explain exactly what IEQ entails, to identify the issues with IEQ here at Penn State, and lastly, offer an organized approach at tackling these issues and improving them for the years to come. So what exactly is IEQ? Simply, in non-architectural terms, it's the conditions inside of a building. According to the U.S. General Services Administration, there are 4 main factors of IEQ which cover the following: indoor air quality, access to daylight and views, pleasant hearing conditions, and occupant control over thermal and lighting conditions, which can then be broken down into these 4 categories: thermal comfort, visual comfort, acoustic comfort, and indoor air quality. According to Henk Brink, a researcher at the Research Center for the Built Environment in the Netherlands, since 2016, there's been a significant increase in studies that link thermal conditions inside classrooms to academic performance of students. The outcomes of these studies show that when IEQ is outside of acceptable ranges, student performance declines heavily. For example, in a study conducted by the University of Tulsa in 104 schools across America, it found that math and reading scores increased nearly 3% when ventilation rates were increased just slightly at 1 liter per second. Now, this percentage may seem small on a test or a quiz, but remember, this was only for that slight change and improvement in ventilation rates. And when combined with other factors of IEQ and other strategies, these numbers can significantly increase. Now, another study conducted by the Rochester Institute of Technology found that out of 435 people surveyed over in offices across America, 48.1% of those people were moderately dissatisfied, or very dissatisfied with the thermal conditions inside of their workplace. Now, this number shows how likely people are to be unhappy and uncomfortable in their work or learning environment. Now, to bring this down to a smaller scale, here at our university, there's a plethora of issues regarding indoor environmental quality. In my 4 years here, I've been in a number of rooms that have lack of daylight. They're either too cold or too hot, and there's even mold in our dorms, as seen above at Penn State's Nittany apartment suites on campus. I mean, take a look around in this room right now. We have no daylight, no natural ventilation. It's a problem. In fact, aside from this case of mold, there's been a number of reported cases, but the issues still exist on campus today. According to the Daily Collegian, in 2021, multiple students alerted campus housing in their North Halls dorms about the appearance of mold. Mold was growing under beds, on their belongings, in window cracks. It was not a place to live. These students went on to develop chronic symptoms, and some were even hospitalized due to pneumonia. Penn State's response was not adequate enough, and again, as I said before, the issue still persists today. These conditions are no place to live, work, or learn, and there must be an active change on campus for the health, well-being, and safety of our students. Due to the extent of these issues, I'm proposing a 3-step plan: educate, evaluate, and enact. The first step of my plan is to educate our student and staff population. I found that students outside of an architecture degree like me are not aware of IEQ, and I'm sure this is the first time you're ever hearing of it and the effects of it on our health. We need engagement from the students and staff actually using these classrooms, but many are unaware about their ability to report poor conditions of IEQ. Now, luckily, there are several student and staff boards and organizations that aim to improve sustainability and environmental comfort on campus. For example, there's the Student Sustainability Advisory Council, the Sustainable Operations Council, the Environmental Health and Safety Boards, and so many more that go unlisted. In collaboration with these organizations, we can host educational events across campus, whether that's lectures, just printing and posting flyers in the hub, or just sending out a mass email to our students informing them on the effects of IEQ. The next part of my plan is an evaluation process. While there is a system in place to report IEQ and poor conditions, students are highly unlikely to do so unless prompted to. According to Penn State IAQ Standards Book of 2014, when contacted about indoor air quality, facility personnel should investigate possible problems and make appropriate corrections. This system is great, however, the only problem is that it's reserved for maintenance faculty only, and students do not have adequate access to report poor conditions inside these classrooms. Therefore, I'm calling for the creation of a student checklist, like a mock of the one I've made up here. It would include questions like the following. In your opinion, has any of the following indoor air factors caused you discomfort or harm in the past 4 months? Just like our SEEQs received every semester to evaluate professors on their performance, this checklist would also be distributed through Canvas and filled out by the students. They'd then go and rate each of these conditions, how often it affects them in the classrooms that they attend every day, either never, sometimes, every week, or daily. And this data would then be distributed back to Penn State. This would promote student engagement across campus and allow the university to receive feedback on the comfort and quality of their classrooms. It'd be easy for maintenance faculty to pinpoint the classrooms that receive their lowest ratings and make appropriate changes. They'd also be able to evaluate how large the scope of these classrooms and the project is across campus. Lastly is the enactment of this data. Based on the feedback Penn State receives, I'm calling for the following: monthly maintenance checks from Penn State's maintenance faculty, and simple changes regarding the lighting, acoustics, and ventilation inside of these classrooms. These changes do not need to be complex or costly. According to Canis Fung, IEQ can be improved simply by giving occupants control to alter components of their indoor environment. This is as easy as making it possible to open or close windows or adjust temperature and light levels inside of the room. By implementing these changes, Penn State would benefit greatly, and I've listed some of those benefits above, but they go on and on. As I mentioned earlier in this presentation, improved IEQ can lead to improved health, which ultimately boosts cognitive performance amongst students. Secondly, we would have great energy savings here at Penn State. Natural ventilation can lower utility bills, which then goes into the third benefit, the promotion of sustainability. In a world where climate change is so prevalent, we need this for the future to promote sustainability across campus. In conclusion, addressing IAQ is not just a matter of comfort, but of direct impacts on our health and academic performance. By proposing this 3-step plan, I've laid the groundwork for tangible improvements across campus. By raising awareness, engaging staff and students, and implementing systematic evaluation and maintenance procedures, we can make Penn State a healthier and happier place for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Our 5th speaker tonight is Caleb Kraft, who's instructed by Robin Kramer.
This is a situation that I'm sure many of us in this room have found ourselves in before. Driving on the highway, 2 or more vehicles are occupying every single lane and you are unable to pass. So, as a responsible driver, you do the right thing, get into the leftmost lane, and wait for your turn to hopefully be able to pass this traffic. More and more other responsible drivers do the same thing, lining up behind you, until somebody gets too close and this happens. I've been on the receiving end of one of these kinds of accidents before, which is why I'm so passionate about the issue of left lane hogs in the United States. A left lane hog is a driver who occupies the leftmost lane, which is supposed to be used for passing, and goes the exact same speed as the rest of traffic, not allowing slower, faster traffic to pass. These kinds of drivers are a dangerous inconvenience on the highway, and traffic reform that would restrict the left lane to only be used for passing only across the country is necessary to get drivers across America to their destinations as safely, efficiently, and quickly as possible. So to begin, I'll take you through the prevalence of the problem of left lane hogs across the country. We'll then dive in to the plan and the policy to curb this kind of behavior. And we will end with the advantages of going with this plan. So to begin, we'll start with the plan. Left lane hogs, as I said before, are a dangerous inconvenience on the road. This is backed up by Mike Moffett in an article for SF Gate written on June 20th, 2018, where he states that left lane hogs cause traffic to pile up by not allowing faster traffic to pass through in the left lane. This causes many problems, as stated by accident lawyer attorney Andrew D. Myers on his law office website, where he lists a few of the problems that are caused by this behavior. First of which is greater congestion on the road. It begins when a slower driver does not allow other traffic to pass. This creates traffic jams in places that normally would not have a high amount of traffic, which in turn creates increased road rage by drivers feeling trapped in their position, not allowed to pass. It's also economically worse for every single driver as they are forced to accelerate and brake far more often than they would if they were traveling at the exact same speed that they planned on traveling the entire ride. And all of these play into a greater factor of a greater chance for causing an accident on the highway. Andrew Myers also states in his law office website that careless driving in the left lane accounts for about 244,000 accidents every single year in the United States. This is an issue that affects about 700 people every single day across the country. So some kind of reform is necessary in order to get these numbers down and keep drivers safe, which takes us nicely into the plan. What you're looking at here is the map of the United States with every single state color-coded and categorized based off of the different left lane laws in each state. The states in the darkest green color restrict traffic on the highway to the left lane to passing only, which is what this policy is modeled after. As you can also see, there are 5 other different levels of left lane laws across the country. It's difficult for a driver to know exactly what the law is in whichever state they're at, driving from state to state or across the country. Those states in green that keep the left lane restricted to passing only make up about 10% of the country currently. This policy would bring that all the way up to 100%. This would nationalize and standardize left lane laws across the entire country. So no matter where a driver is, they know exactly what the law is, depending on whichever state they're in. This would also come with increased penalties for those who do not follow the rules of the road, such as fines that can reach up to $1,000, as well as increased points on tickets if caught abusing the left lane. So we've heard the plan. What are the advantages of keeping with this plan? The first question you may be asking yourself is this something that's easily enforceable? And it absolutely is. We already have highway patrol sitting on the highway, keeping drivers safe by pulling over drivers who do not respect the rules of the road, like an offense such as speeding. All that would be needed to be done is ask highway patrol to enforce one more rule on the road. Keep drivers excessively hogging the left lane out of the left lane. So those states in green that we mentioned before already have some of these laws in place. How do we know that they are benefiting from this? An article for Forbes magazine written by Lauren Fix, published on April 12th, 2018, shows that those states in green, such as Washington, Maine, and New Jersey, already give out fines that can reach up to $1,000 and classify the violation as a misdemeanor, which in those states is the same level as drunk driving. So these kinds of drivers are punished very harshly. The IIHS, or the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, published data in May 2023 that those same states have some of the lowest deaths per capita on the highway at about 8 in 100,000, compared to another state such as Arkansas, who has no left lane law, which is all the way up at 23 per 100,000. This is about 3 times as many deaths per 100,000 in these kinds of states. So the number of deaths in states with these kinds of laws are way lower. But how do we know that that is because of these kinds of laws? We can specifically look at Washington State, who passed their new left lane laws in 2019. According to Ladenburg Injury Law Offices, published on their law website on February 7th, 2023, there were about 116,000 car accidents in Washington prior to the law being passed in the year of 2018. The most recent data in 2022, after this law was passed, shows that that number was brought all the way down to 78,544 car accidents, which is a nearly 33% reduction in car accidents. So this is something that is proven to have kept many drivers a lot safer and reduced the total amount of accidents in the states that it's been implemented in. I also mentioned that this would be a national policy. How do we know that this would work to scale if this would be implemented all across America? So let's take a look at another country like Germany, who has also implemented similar laws like this. The Directorate General for Mobility and Transport of the European Union published data on March 8th, 2024, that Germany has a road death rate of about 3 per 100,000, compared to the United States, which on average has a death rate of about 13 per 100,000. Craig Fitzgerald for Go Upstate, in an article posted on October 25th, 2019, explains this data by sharing that German passing lane hogs are considered traffic coercion, which basically means that in that country, these kinds of offenses are classified much harsher than another offense, like speeding on the highway. So they're treated much harsher than they are in the States. Germany also has a uniform code of travel and a dedicated police force helping to enforce these laws across the entire country, which is a nice parallel to how this policy would nationalize and standardize the law across the entire country, as well as pass the enforcement off to Highway Patrol. So to wrap things up, we've seen why left lane hogs are a problem across the country, as they account for thousands of accidents every single year. We've gone over the plan, which would standardize and nationalize left lane laws to keep the left lane on highways across America only for passing, and increase fines and penalties for those abusing the new left lane law. We've also seen that these kinds of laws have been proven to work and have worked in states like Washington and have worked at scale to a whole country in countries like Germany. So I invite you to think back to the beginning. Imagine that this car was never here. You got to your destination safely and efficiently, and that accident had never happened. Thank you.
Wow, how did we make it to our last speaker already? Our sixth and final presenter tonight is Reid Scorzetti, who is instructed by Mark Kohler.
Think back to a time in your childhood when you climbed a tree, or played on a swing that hung from one of its branches, or even carved your initials in the shape of a heart on its trunk. Now imagine if instead that tree had looked like this, or this, or this. If deforestation continues at the current unsustainable rate that it is, we're going to lose more than just those memories. Forests are the lungs of our earth, and without our lungs, one day we won't be able to breathe. According to Rainforest Alliance, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the fight against deforestation, a swath of rainforest the size of 40 football fields disappears each minute. Deforestation poses a serious threat to the health and well-being of every animal and human on this planet, and more widespread sustainability standards must be implemented in order to slow or reverse its effects. That's where the Forest Stewardship Council, or the FSC, comes in. In this speech, I'll be discussing the problem that deforestation poses, how the FSC regulations can help combat that problem, and why it's the best step moving forward. According to the United Nations, forests are home to more than 80% of all terrestrial species of plants, animals, and insects. But most importantly, they provide us with what we need most, oxygen. When we cut down those forests, we're actively stripping ourselves away of the things that give us life. Deforestation occurs primarily in tropical regions such as Brazil, Indonesia, and a multitude of countries in Africa. The expansion of agriculture, according to an article by the World Wildlife Fund, is responsible for most of the world's deforestation. But with such expansion, through unsustainable measures, comes a multitude of problems for the short and the long term. With less trees, the carbon dioxide that we exhale and the greenhouse gases we emit through human activities aren't trapped by forests the way that they should be. Currently, our forests, the so-called carbon sinks, are actually emitting more carbon than they're absorbing due to deforestation. According to an article by the World Resources Institute, if tropical deforestation were a country, it would rank third in carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, only behind China and the United States of America. Beyond this contribution to climate change, deforestation also destroys the homes of vast amounts of plants, animals, and even people. On March 4th of this year, The Guardian released an article stating that dozens of koalas have been killed or injured and left for dead during the logging of blue gum plantations in South Australia. When habitats are lost to deforestation, animals are either killed or forced to move to new locations, which could serve as a serious problem to us as well. According to National Geographic, an estimated 60% of emerging infectious diseases come from wildlife. And a major cause of a virus's jump from wildlife to humans is through habitat loss, often through deforestation. I'm sure that most of us can agree that the last thing we need right now is another global pandemic. Now that I've talked about some of the problems that deforestation poses, let me talk about how FSC regulations can be a help to that problem. The FSC regulations can be a major help to the problem of deforestation if implemented on a larger scale. First, allow me to explain exactly what the FSC is. The Forest Stewardship Council is an independent, nonprofit organization that creates sustainability standards for forestry practices around the world. When the FSC certifies an entity as sustainable, their products receive an FSC label, showing that they follow the rules and regulations of sustainable forestry. According to the FSC website, approximately 10% of the world's working forests are currently FSC certified. The goal of this expansion would be to eventually increase that number to 100. The key of this expansion is to solidify the strict regulations as a central part of our global supply chain through a collective effort from governments and corporations around the world. Our very own Pennsylvania is one of the states with FSC certifications in its state-managed forests. This means that timber that's harvested in PA state forests is done so in a sustainable manner. FSC certification, however, isn't only limited to the producers of wood products. For example, McDonald's requires all of its wood-based products to be sourced from FSC certified sources, like its paper bags. As more producers and consumers of wood products adopt these FSC regulations, the market for sustainable wood grows, while the market for unsustainable wood shrinks. Now, if more governments and corporations around the world can adopt these FSC regulations and limit their imports and exports to only FSC certified wood, the domino effect will begin. This domino effect will eventually cause even forestry practices in places like Brazil, where deforestation is at its worst, to adopt FSC regulations in order to sell their wood. Now that I've discussed how FSC regulations work, let me talk about a certain drawback of the plan, but why it's still the best step moving forward. The expansion of FSC certifications is our best step moving forward because currently our only other option is nothing. Commitments to ending deforestation have been made before by government bodies around the world, yet we still face the problem worse than ever before. According to an article by BBC, in 2021, over 100 world leaders had pledged to end or reverse deforestation by 2030. But Professor Simon Lewis, an expert on climate and forests at University College London, says that the world has been here before and that previous commitments have failed to slow deforestation at all. This is how that most recent promise is going. Now, you don't have to be a forest expert to know that these kinds of empty promises from politicians can be easily broken. What's really needed is strict and enforced guidelines that have been proven to provide real change. In a 2020 study done on FSC effectiveness in the Congo Basin, researchers found that logging concessions with FSC certifications accounted for 48% less deforestation than those without. If implemented on a larger scale, we could see this almost 50% reduction globally. One issue with the expansion, however, is enforcing the guidelines, and there have been issues with this in the past. According to an article published by Yale Environment 360, many logging companies appeared to obtain an FSC certification for management practices on one forest and then used it to cast a halo over their far more extensive dealings on forests elsewhere with little regard for sustainability or even legality. Now, obviously, that's a major problem with this solution. And in order to combat that kind of problem, we're going to need more people on the ground checking the day-to-day operations in order to maintain the integrity of FSC certified bodies. This would more than likely require some sort of government funding, which in turn means increased taxes. But in my eyes, and I'm sure many of you can agree, I'd rather pay more in taxes than face a time in my life when oxygen becomes a commodity. To summarize, deforestation is a global crisis, but one solution can help to negate its harm. The loss of animal and plant life, human livelihood, and fresh air are the harsh realities that we currently face and will continue to face if deforestation continues at its current rate. By implementing FSC certifications on a global scale and monitoring them strictly, we can shift the supply and demand of the wood products market towards a more sustainable level and bring life back to so many of the forests that we've lost. Bernardo Flores, a researcher at the Federal University of Santa Catarina, Brazil, says that we must reach net zero emissions and net zero deforestation as quickly as possible. It needs to be done now. If we lose the Amazon, it would be problematic for humanity. With such a worldwide crisis knocking at our door, swift and immediate action must be taken. Otherwise, we risk dooming not only ourselves, but the planet that we call home. Thank you. I did like it. Check 1, 2.
Wow, again, that hour went so fast. How about another round of applause and cheers for our 6 speakers? All right, so we are going to indeed pause and take a brief intermission while our judges confer. If you are here in the lovely Sparks building watching, feel free to hang out and wait for the winners to be announced. If you are watching over Zoom, same thing applies to you. And in fact, meanwhile, while you wait, feel free to type into the chat some comments of support and encouragement for our 6 speakers, who will all be getting a copy of the chat and the many comments that our viewers contributed over the course of the evening. Stay tuned. Thank you.
I know, right? Alrighty, folks, we're back. We're so back. I am very excited to announce the results of tonight's contest. All 6 of our speakers were incredibly fabulous, but we have results here. So I am going to begin by announcing our 6th placing contestant. And please come on up, receive your certificate, and enjoy the glory for a couple of seconds. And yeah, all right. So our 6th place contestant receiving $75 is Caleb Kraft. Woo! Thank you very much. Appreciate you. All right. Our 5th place contestant, also earning $75, is Nicole Morandi. Thank you. All right. Our 4th place contestant, also receiving $75, is Aidan Ethier. Thank you. All right. Here's where the big money comes in, y'all. So our 3rd place contestant receiving $100 is Reid Scorzetti. Thank you, sir. All right. Our 2nd place contestant receiving $200 is Erin Bratcher. Thank you so much. Meaning our 1st place contestant, aka the winner of the CAS Public Speaking Contest of Spring 2024, is Alayna Faison. By the way, earning $300. Congratulations, great work. Alrighty, y'all, that is our contest. I will hand it off to our lovely MC, Bonnie, to wrap us up.
I think dinner's on you tonight, Alayna. With that cheering section, how could you resist? Well, as you noticed, our contestants all concluded their speech on a very fitting ending note. So it's my job to wrap us on up tonight so that we can enjoy the remaining daylight, since no natural light in here, no fresh air, right? So let's get on out there and enjoy that April weather. But yeah, as we wrap up tonight, wow, I feel like a lot of you in the audience, both here and on Zoom, might be thinking, wow, these students are amazing, brilliant, brave, innovative, and they're going big places, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the conventional pieces of wisdom about being an effective public speaker, is that it can make you kind of a powerful person, right? Now, the way we actually like to think of it here in communication arts and sciences is that being an effective public speaker actually helps distribute power, right? Because you have these opportunities to hold our institutions, our stakeholders, our leaders accountable. And you know what? Let's face it. How many times a day do all of you complain and gripe about something and then don't do anything about it, right? I mean, I complain daily about the temperature in my classroom buildings and my office, right? As I walk across College Avenue, Beaver Avenue, Pew Street every single day where I live. Yes, I'm very alert as a pedestrian to the traffic that's happening, right? Unfortunately, I will admit I have fallen victim to phishing once or twice in my very short life, right? As a professor, I'm really concerned and interested about the ways that generative AI can be used, should be used, etc., right? I do drive on I-80 on occasionally, and I experience the left lane hog, and I complain and go on about my day, right? And when I'm scrolling social media and I'm seeing images of deforestation happening and the poor little koalas, right? My heart breaks that I feel powerless and I can't do anything about it, right? So what makes our 6 speakers tonight so amazing is they haven't just grumbled and thrown up their hands. They've decided to do something about it, right? And they've proposed these policies tonight and shared their ideas with us so that, again, we can come together as community members and make decisions to really improve the places that we live. So with that said, thank you so much once again for being willing to come here tonight and share your ideas with us about how to make our various communities more just and compassionate. Thank you, everybody, so much. Have a great evening.